Sunday, June 18th, 2023 at the Academy of the Performing Arts, Napa, Lord Kitchener Auditorium from 7 p.m. featuring incredible performances by QED, Raymond Edwards, Eddie Cumberbatch, and Nigel Floyd, the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, Chrison Joseph, Hermina Charles, Nigel Rojas, Rayon Elbon, the Shiv Shakti Dance Group, and other distinguished artists. Tickets available for $250, $300, or $400 at Napa Box Office, or call the ticket hotlines at 797-9884 or 799-3306. Support the St. Francis Restoration and Enchanted Evening 3.
WESN.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, your content capital. It's always interesting what foolishness we might be saying back and forth between those of us here in front of the camera and those behind the camera, especially just before the show starts rolling. But, folks, it's another beautiful morning in paradise, which juxtaposes very ironically, very unfortunately, against perhaps some of the cleanup and recovery efforts after the flooding that we've seen earlier this week. Watching some of the clips pulled by our news team there just before we started Talking Point on that particular story, I was hit with the fact that it is true, we literally see these same scenes every year. And it's never felt mitigated or in some ways to the point where, you know, it's fine, it's normal, everything's going to be okay, it's not that bad. It's never felt like that. It always looks bad. And I can't imagine what it's like to have my essentially whole private life, everything that I own, you know, potentially at risk. You might have mold, it might damage your home, it might damage your belongings. At the very least, it heavily inconveniences you because it's not just about draining the water, the cleanup and the possibility of diseases being spread via a variety of different means that comes with floodwaters. I do wonder if this is just one more thing that we're going to somehow learn to tolerate. And I use the word tolerate very loosely. It happens every year. Is it that the government is taking it seriously? Are we demanding enough from the government? Is this a sign that the upcoming local government elections are even more important than we think? Because, let's be honest, my house hasn't been flooded out. I don't have to worry about this like other members of the nation. But the fact that it's happening here, this is not some distant country where we're seeing people we don't know, you know, suffer under circumstances we have no control over. I would like to think we have some kind of control over the flooding that happens in our own backyard. Anyway, that was not necessarily planned, but I do have some topics there that I want to hit before we get into some of the juicier stuff later on the show. So let's kick off the daily review. And some people might find this to be just as juicy. Starting off with the response of one economist, Marla Dukaran, in one of our local newspapers, the Newsday, where she says, well, Minister of Finance, don't blame the press for having outdated information when it's your ministry that's supposed to be publishing the information, and it's your ministry that is outdated, is behind. In some cases, 6 months or more behind, because they most recently published not just the end of year report, but also the fourth quarter and the third quarter. Now, first, let's just deal with that. Is it that the ministry is being inefficient? Or is it that there's some amount of bad intentions? Usually I will ascribe to the saying, don't attribute to malice what you could attribute to incompetence, paraphrasing it. But then there's also the fact that, yes, apparently, I did not look at it myself, but the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister lambasted the media on the fact that, hey, using outdated information. Because they use the word, they are providing misinformation, or the phrase, sorry. They use that phrase. And when you use that phrase, you're spreading misinformation. The media is spreading misinformation. You are accusing the media of unethical practice, potentially a crime, because you can't publish information on time. And I've always gotten the sense that, look, the most up-to-date information is going to come from the government. Cool. Don't blame the media for not knowing what you know. Transparency, again, can work for you. But when you want to keep everything close to the vest, why do you want to do that? Why do you think that's okay? And then you keep things close to the vest. You want to control how information is disseminated, and then complain, well, why you didn't know? I know. Why you didn't know? Because you didn't tell us. So now we have to ask, was it kept from us? But then to move on a little bit further into the topic of the HSF, Maladukaran, economist, I would say well-respected, she goes on to point out that the HSF, 65% of the fund is supposed to be invested in fixed income and 35% in equity. What does that mean? 65% is supposed to be invested in assets that will not be volatile. The returns are fixed, which means that if things are going good, we don't get any extra money. But if things are going bad, we maintain a fixed income at a fixed schedule. It's not going to be reduced. We're not going to see dividends or growth reduce because it's not going to follow the market, whereas 35% will, because you don't necessarily want to just limit yourself to only fixed income assets, fixed income investments. And she has said, well, no, it seemed as though 49% of the fund was invested in fixed income. So approximately 16% was invested. This is how the HFSF is supposed to be governed, how it's supposed to be run. So saying that the person running it is bad, I don't like that. Because they've had good performances, and now we've seen horrible performances. But saying why it's bad, that's different. Now we're seeing where the procedure is not being adhered to. So therein lies that other question. Be careful. You want to kick up a fuss, but in kicking up a fuss, you might end up kicking a stone and hurting your own foot. I don't know if Maladukaran might have decided to publish this or make these comments if you didn't decide to kick up a fuss over information that you have not yet released to the media, and then when they say the media is spreading wrong information. But let's move on, because time. The next story I wanted to get into, well, Philip Edward Alexander, of course, his party, the People's Empowerment Party, they have up front, I believe, said they don't want anything to do with the UNC-led coalition. They already have a partner that they want to move with, and that is the Reunited Farmers Alliance, which was a lobby group for farmers that's now turning themselves into a political party, apparently. They claim that they have support of other NGOs and other stakeholders, which is cool. Philip Alexander going his own way, I think, is cool, because this whole situation is very unfortunate. Now we have former UNC activists coming out and saying, well, Boss Lady, you didn't want a coalition in the last general election, or however many elections ever since the partnership sunk. Now you want a coalition. And I think the unspoken question, if they did not ask it, is why the change? You could change your mind, but can you explain why? That would help take the change in direction seriously. And, you know, it would reduce the impact of the criticisms from your political opponents. Well, the flip side is, going back to Philip Alexander's, it seems as though he is going down that all too often mistaken path of being a third force or what have you. That is to say, any party not the two incumbent parties. And saying, well, look, people want change. We're offering them change. Vote for change. They want something different. The problem is the campaign, and I remember, I think this is around the time of those elections where we had the 1818, there was a third party and their whole slogan was break the deadlock. But you're not telling me why I should vote for you. You know, if I just want to upset the status quo, I vote for you. But that seems so random. That's not really how politics is supposed to work. I'm supposed to vote for you because you have good ideas and you have something to offer beyond just being an alternative to break the deadlock. But what if you're a bad alternative? And I am concerned that Mr. Alexander is going down this same path where he's saying, you know, I mean, yes, the UNC is looking weak, although one could argue, depending on how you read the tea leaves, they're making up ground to the PNM, right? But when he says, well, look, people want change, vote for change, change for the sake of change, I don't think works in TNT, first of all. And I don't think it's healthy. We really, really, really need our politics to be more about the issues. And all parties need to do this. Now, obviously, the government is going to talk about the issues because they're setting policy. So they kind of do it by default. The opposition needs to talk not just about the issues now, but what is the potential solutions. And third parties need to go straight to what is my ideology. Not just, oh, I'm going to be different. It's easy to say that you're going to be different. You know what? I'm going to be different to any other TV host in TNT. I could say that. Doesn't mean anything unless my actions prove it. The problem with elections is you're only going to get a chance to prove it when you get voted in. So you have nothing to bank on there to get voted in. So you need to present yourself, you need to present a strong case about what your potential will be so that people don't limit what your potential is in their minds and make assumptions of you so that you never get a chance. You're not holding any office right now, so you need to come even better, stronger, more detailed, more thorough. You need to show people that you're better prepared because you have ideas. And not just to say you have ideas, because that's mistake number one. Then the next mistake is some people might go one step further. They might give the bare bones of an idea. You need to show detailed ideas. And yes, there will be information that only the government knows that you don't have access to. That's fine. The more thorough your planning is, the more you could put things in place to take that into account. But there's a reason why in other nations, political parties also have ideologies by which they follow, by which their user base rallies around. And the identification tactics only work so well. And eventually, they're not going to work at all. But we in TNT, we just want to abide by ketchup and mustard, and by this race and that race, and which race should be voted with what party, and who is a traitor to the people. We need a bit more than that. So again, I'm hoping for these third forces to break the mold, not just to say, well, we are an alternative to break the deadlock. That's not enough. It never was, so I don't understand why the temptation to go down that path. Folks, let's take a break. When we come back, going to go back to Tobago, switching gears from the chief admin topic back to the vocal recording topic. More to say about that on Talking Point when we return after this.
Kenny Sports Center is having a Grandfather's Day sale. From now until Sunday 18th June, get an amazing 20% off everything. You heard right, 20% off everything in store. Get all your top brands like Adidas, New Balance, Kinetic, and a lot more. Visit any of our branches today: Port of Spain, West Mall, Long Circular Mall, Trinity Mall, and Carlton Center San Fernando for this amazing 20% off sale. Happy Father's Day from Kenny Sports Center, where dads are appreciated.
As Kevin Hart would say, damn! Why we have so much minors out on the streets? There's an after-school program happening there.
Side women, don't give up. You know, you can become queen one day.
Those companies who are currently looking for their money that they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank, it's not there. ChatGPT is basically the start of Terminator. Our relationship with the colonial powers is like a relationship with a little bit of abuse that people like to stay in. And we remember how that was. Put in $100 and later tonight, you'll get back $3,000. I promise you. I promise you not. Did you rent an accent while you were across there?
When you're in the proximity of Donald Trump, somehow you adopt his aura.
First of all, I thought the $200 would be more than enough. It's $200.
As a goat farmer, I had 3 goats. Yeah, 3 goats and 1 cow. You know the name?
No, I don't.
Right, Messi, LeBron, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the cow name Haaland.
I love Trinidad and Tobago, you know.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
So, it's interesting how the news coming out of Tobago is just moving so fast. First, we had, you could say, dueling interviews / press conferences over the THA chief administration situation. Then comes dueling interviews, press conferences coming from the THA executive and the minority leader. the speed, I think, at which, point and counterpoint is coming out, especially since it's not as though they're, the speakers in both instances are in the same location, debating directly against each other. I appreciate, not just as a member of the media, but as a citizen who wants to hear more, because ideally, hopefully, you would think, as more is being brought to light, we are moving towards a resolution. That's yet to be seen if we will get a proper resolution to either of these situations, and not just a set of political bacchanal. But the minority leader, as I said, responded to public statements made by the Chief Secretary with regards to the voice note situation in a very interesting way. Now, I can't play everything that he played. In fact, some of it might even be copyrighted. So I suggest for the entertainment value, you could, watch his press conference on his the Facebook page of the minority leader of the THA. But I have some snippets here to see some points that he made that I would like to discuss. So it's time to cue this.
Playing smart with foolishness, telling us about he and his executive would be exonerated because of some security concern, and telling us, it's clear we're not stupid, because they're believing that Tobagonians are fools and trying to take us for fools, but we are not, because you stayed silent for 21 days to answer a simple question, and now it is clear that you're now coming to be technical about it, so you're trying to shoot the messenger, because it's clear that you're trying now to say that wherever this conversation was had, that the room was bugged and that somebody surreptitiously was able to retrieve this information. But it matters not how the information was gathered, because at the end of the day, what this person was able to provide to the public is a conversation of criminality, and this person should be applauded. In fact, if I have my way, they should be awarded. And this is what the whistleblower legislation that is currently in the parliament is really trying to foster. Persons coming forward to expose criminality in government services. The Chief Secretary did something very clever that I sure might have missed a lot of you, and is that he went on to implicate his entire executive council, because here it is, there's an issue with an audio recording of just you and your Secretary of Education, but you went on to tell us that it is your entire executive council that you are seeking to exonerate, which means that at some point, at some level, wherever this conversation was happening, it appears that this was happening in the full view of his entire executive council. And today, I want to call on members of the executive council, every 16 members of them, and all who were present at the time. You have still some chance to free yourself, to rid yourself of the trouble to come. I'm therefore encouraging you, as these investigations, both at the level of the police begins and the level of the Integrity Commission, to go quietly, speak your truth, and let the truth set you free. Do not try to hide for anybody. Some of them I know and I hold dear as colleagues, because the first thing I said to these members, I said I would hate to see any one of us coming in here at the end of the 4-year term have to walk out in silver bracelet. By this time, their silence and their non-denial is an admittance of guilt. So there's no question about that at this point. They are guilty as charged. They have not denied that it's not their voices. They have not denied that the conversation didn't happen. Therefore, they have no other choice in this matter but to demit office. And I say no more on this. Is the arrogance of this Chief Secretary that something so serious is before you, and you are telling us after staying silent for 21 days, treating us like peasants, and you are the emperor, that you will speak on your own time. After we have a recording where your voice is heard, conspiring to misuse our money, and you are telling us on your time, and we are accepting this, Tobago, we have to do better.
So some of what the minority leader of the THA, and he made that distinction there, is not the minority leader of the PNM, it's minority leader of the THA. Some of the things he said there, I said yesterday. Why does it have to be on your own time? This is not something that you could just schedule as though, you know, it's a meeting, you know, or it's documents to peruse at your leisure. No, there's a serious controversy that the public has a vested interest in because it implies heavily of corrupt practices. Now, initially, I was disappointed in the minority leader because he was par for the course of politics in TNT, and one could say, you know, the English-speaking world at this point in 2023, which is, you are the opposition, so you oppose everything. You oppose everything just because. There's no reasoning or ideology behind what you oppose, because you oppose everything. They could say the grass is green, you will say, no, the grass is blue, because you are the opposition. That said, now I have to question, maybe he was right to oppose everything, given how things have turned out. And this is what the Chief Secretary does not seem to understand. When you hurt your own perception, you help enhance the arguments of your critics. Because when they were crying wolf all the time, we thought, hey, Peter's just crying wolf again. Except now, you know, we see in the fire after the smoke, so we have to reassess where we fail in saying, well, oh God, they're just opposing for opposing's sake. Maybe not. And maybe some of the harder criticisms that I thought was coming out of nowhere about the Chief Secretary, maybe there's some truth to it. Not saying that it's totally true. Probably a lot of embellishment and exaggeration. In fact, one could argue the minority leader's statements had some embellishment and exaggeration there. It's not as though the Chief Secretary is literally acting like an emperor. But the allegory, you know, there's some truth to it. There's some truth there. And I would like to say one thing. The most important thing that I need to point out from what the minority leader said, though, he said it doesn't matter where the recording came from. And on some level, it's true. But on some level, that's not true. Because I don't know if the recording could be used in a criminal trial. I don't know if it will hold up to the standards that is required to be, for evidence to be considered valid. I don't know if there will be any technical way to contest the audio recording. That's what the Chief Secretary is apparently seeking to do. I think the minority leader hit the nail on the head, where the Chief Secretary is saying, oh, there's security concerns. And the recording might have potentially been done in some manner that could be considered illegal even. But I think where the minority leader is not wrong is to say, well, look, it doesn't matter with regards to that because the truth is exposed. And even if we can't use it as evidence, we could still dig into the matter. Because we you know, some of the dirty laundry has been aired out. And even if it's lost, we could find more. Hopefully. The thing is, even if, and this is what the Chief Secretary needs to understand, even if the recording was made using some illegal means, at the end of the day, that is a separate matter. You still have your own matter to deal with. It does not exonerate you. It does not clear you of any wrongdoing. You need to prove that the recording is fake. You need to prove that you didn't say what you said. Once you cannot do that, once the recording could be reasonably assumed to be legitimately your voice, unedited in any way to change the content of what you said and what the other person, the Secretary for Education, said, then the person that made the recording, if they did anything wrong to get the recording, they will have to answer for that. But that doesn't change how we're going to view you, and potentially that's not going to change how the investigation is going to go in the grander scheme of things. And if you thought, oh, well, it's not a legal recording, so they have to, it don't mean anything. If you thought that's going to make it go away, again, I'm going to say it again. You need to grow up a little bit. You're the Chief Secretary of the THA. You are not in a kindergarten or a primary school playing games with your friends. I don't know if you're ready for the level upon which this office that you hold technically lies. It's a serious level. And maybe at the end of the day, nothing will come out of it with regards to the police investigation and the Integrity Commission. But this is one time where the court of public opinion is going to want answers, and rightfully so. And I'm not going to fault the court of public opinion from making assumptions if the wheels of justice cannot give us a definitive answer. If investigations could clear the Chief Secretary, that's great. I'll be happy for that, because the main thing that I want is the truth, the definite truth, the proven truth, so that I know for certain what happened, so I could be sure and secure with what happened in this situation. The implications are too grave for this to just be swept under the rug. So this is not one of those times where, we can't be sure, so let's just leave it alone. No. Your hand got caught in the cookie jar in a rather, brutal manner. You're exposed, for better or worse. And while I'm not going to assume that you're guilty just because you haven't rebutted the situation, to some extent, that line of thinking is probably going to be more common than you think. And I can't necessarily think of an argument to dissuade people from that, because by all rights, it looks bad that you're being so silent and that you're trying to attack the messenger and attack how the message was delivered, as opposed to trying to refute the contents themselves. It's rather spectacular to see how things have unfolded in Tobago. And I would just like to say, for the record, caller from San Fernando, this does not prove me right. I remember you said, you told me to give them a chance, and now you have to say, this does not prove me right, because I did not think things went to this level. And it doesn't have to be on the level of corruption. I'm just talking about the inability to manage their own situation, their own crises, which to some extent you could say is self-inflicted. Folks, let's take a break. When we come back, I'll be welcoming my guests. We'll be going now back to the topic of local government elections. Of course, things have been debated in Parliament, in the Senate in particular. We'll get into the topic of the reforms or lack thereof, and the Borough Bill, and the point of that. When we return here on Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Sean Michael Small here. Pleased to be joined by Opposition Senator Janti Lakshminial. We don't have too much time. Let's go straight into it. Of course, local government elections are coming up, and there have been a lot of politicking, for better or worse, within the halls of Parliament as various bills that are tied to local government, Senator, have come up. One of the latest ones being the Borough Bill, which your comments, I guess, solidified my fears with regards to this whole situation. As a friend of mine who lived in Digicel pointed out, he didn't actually see the practical change besides just, well, we switch in the name, regional corporation to borough. I mean, please somehow say it isn't so.
Unfortunately, I cannot. There really is no difference between a city, a borough, or a region in terms of access to resources, funding, the way you operate, etc. The difference really is superficial. If you're a borough, you have a mayor, whereas if you're a region, you have a chairman. That's the most significant difference. You still have councillors, you still have aldermen, you still have to vote for them, and they still get an allocation at the discretion of central government. They still wait on releases from central government to fix your potholes, to clean your drains, to do whatever else, for all the other things that regional corporations, borough corporations, everything that falls under local government. In the local government reform package, I'm speaking very quickly because I know you're short on time, there's no distinction made between regions and boroughs. So to think that by elevating the status of two regions to boroughs, that with this rollout of reform, which I think is what the government are trying to say without saying it because they know it's not true, but they're trying to give people the impression that on the brink of this reform that they've promised, that this elevation in status will somehow benefit the boroughs now of Digicel and Siparia. That is absolutely false and untrue. It is a matter of status that you give a certain significance, that you see that these, what may have started off as what, in the United States they call a township, you've sort of grown and you've grown and so on. But there's no difference in your structure in terms of how you are governed at a local government level.
Well, let's speak to the reform, because we've talked about it on Talking Point with my various co-hosts and contributors. One of the things that I thought was the government's plan was, well, we want the year extension to try to get reform in place so that we have a win under our belt to say, look at us, we did something good, vote for us in the election now. But it was pointed out to me, and my theory got sunk by the fact that I don't know what was achieved. And in fact, I think I don't know if it was the minister or the prime minister saying, look how much we did. We formed the Ministry of Local Government, or we fixed the Ministry of Local Government, or that was more or less it. That initial first step was the one thing that the prime minister could point out. He couldn't actually point out, okay, so the reforms, where?
Well, I don't know what fixing they've done at the ministry. I don't know how well a ministry is functioning when, in the week after that decision from the Privy Council, the ministry practically went silent and shut down. So, to me, that was a serious lapse and a deficiency and a blatant slap in the face and disregard for the citizens of the country when the ministry just refused to even speak and to say what is the status of local government. The truth of the matter is, and you could verify this for yourself and anybody is free to check it, save and accept the provisions that were necessary to put off which they said would help them or allow them to put off the election, which has now been overruled by the court. Save and accept those provisions. Nothing else has been proclaimed in local government. Nothing has been done with respect to the reform. So the argument that they were, implementing that 1 year extension of time for councillors and making it retrospectively applicable to the sitting councillors in order to roll out the reforms, they had 6 months before the Privy Council ruled, and absolutely nothing was done. Nothing has been implemented. Nothing has changed with local government. So we are entering another election and now going to elect councillors and aldermen for a period of 4 years, because that's what they've proclaimed, but there's nothing new for the government to show for local government. And this is part of what, and I can't take credit for this, it was a newspaper editorial I read it in, but it's been called, and I've adopted it, it's called the implementation deficit of the PNM. They are very good at propaganda when it comes to promoting legislation. And I could sit here and list all of the things that they have promised in their legislative reforms that they have brought and the pieces of legislation that they have brought to the parliament since I've been there, at least since 2020. And I cannot pinpoint any significant implementation or change in what they are doing that has bettered the lives of citizens of this country. So we have great laws being passed. We have a law that talks about videotaping confessions so that they will stand up better before a judge and a jury in court and so on, and they wouldn't be so easily thrown out, and that will help raise conviction rate. Not one police station, as far as I'm aware, has been outfitted. They talk about pepper spray after the opposition makes so much noise, and we had all candlelight movements and all these things. How many people have received permits for pepper spray? Nothing is implemented, and local government has just joined the queue of things that the government touts as accomplishments, and yet there's actually no rollout, there's no implementation, and no difference, not even a minimal difference in the lives of citizens of this country.
Now, I'm not too sure if we've spoken about the intentions of the government's reforms, but is there any merit to what they were trying to do? Because they were looking at the THA as the model, and we're going to put in new executives, bodies that will have more authority over, because the Prime Minister said, well, you know, the CEO really runs the show. And the elected officials kind of don't matter rarely if the CEO doesn't want them to matter. So is there any merit? Because the irony, of course, is the more merit there is, the lack of implementation actually kind of is more damning and frustrating.
Yeah. So yeah, they touted the THA model as a way to have to give more autonomy to local governments. We had some concerns about those executive councils because they would be appointed by the mayors, which really would mean that whoever wins in a split corporation, we have a couple of them. We have Sangre Grande, we have Superior, we have San Fernando. They're split almost, down the middle, one way, two, 3 seats make the difference. Who has the majority? The majority determines who becomes mayor, essentially. And then, the mayor appoints the councils. If the mayor has all of the councils appointed, then, the minority will perhaps be left out, and then the minority doesn't have much say in what takes place. So we were very concerned about that. And that is how the THA is run, because the THA is run differently. The THA is given a sort of autonomy, almost like they have their own parliament. The THA is supposed to run like a little parliament, and they are like a little cabinet. So they're saying they want to create little cabinets throughout the local government and all of that. But I'm very concerned about minority bodies, whether the minority is the PNM or the UNC, being silenced in terms of decision making and so on with these executive councils. I don't think that inefficiencies in the public service, and that's what the staff of regional corporations are. They are public servants. And inefficiencies with public servants, to me, could be addressed in different ways. And I feel that giving perhaps, I thought that there should be maybe a different approach. It's almost like the way that the Prime Minister has announced disbanding service commissions because the public service is inefficient. Is that the solution? Is it the solution to remove independent oversight, to remove, basically insulation from political influence and so on, in order to achieve efficiency? We all want efficiency in the public service, but are we prepared to sacrifice that insulation that the public servants enjoy from political interference? And that's the question. And that's the concern that the opposition really has with all of this reform and so on. Will handing all the power over to the elected officials make a difference, or will it, will it really improve efficiency? We are left to see. Will it turn the regional corporations now into small little party groups? And depending on which party has the majority of seats and controls the corporation, will it then become like, a little center for political propaganda and promotion. Because if I am the, if the UNC is controlling our corporation and they, have all this autonomy under this local government reform and they can appoint all the executive councils and they could do as they please, would the PNM persons who maybe have 1 seat or 2 seats in that corporation, would the persons who live in areas that vote strongly in favor of the PNM feel that they are being adequately represented? Would they fear political victimization?
Well,
it is that there isn't a CEO and a public health inspector and all of that who report to the public service and not to the political directorate, and that's the concern.
Well, I have a further question, because in theory, the government will learn from their mistake with regards to how they handle the bill that pushed the election back. They're not going to necessarily leave things up for interpretation, yes. We hope. So now, they haven't done any reforms. It's a 4-year term after this next election. One would think, or at least assume, that if these reforms matter, they're going to try to push them through after the election, potentially retroactively applying some things. I don't know if they will try to get that. Is there any concern from your side of the bench that that might happen and that retroactive application might have
in the debate on the validation bill, I did address that, and I told them stop being lazy and come to the parliament. The way that you implement reforms that may affect rights and so on is not to simply proclaim it and say, oh, it's proclaimed and therefore it's now the law and it applies to sitting councils and all of that. That's pure stupidity. I'm sorry, I can't find a better word. It is pure stupidity. What you do is you bring a bill to parliament and expressly say, this is going to apply to sitting council, and you give the parliament the opportunity. See, there's no absolute ban on retrospective legislation, It's just that it shouldn't be done by the executive by way of an interpretation. It should be expressly stated. Had they come to the parliament and said, we're proclaiming the amendments to Section 11 of the Municipal Corporations Act, a 2-clause bill, it will now be applicable to the election that took place in XY in 2019, 2nd of December 2019. They brought that bill to Parliament and they permitted, or they put a specific clause in the amendment bill that, this will apply whatever it is. The Parliament could have spoken about it. It could have been duly passed by the parliamentarians and nothing would have been wrong. So there are many reforms going forward that don't have to be retrospectively applied. They could apply going forward even with the sitting councils that will be elected on the 14th of August. But if there are things that require retrospective application, if there are things that may affect the rights and the and so on of the sitting councils and aldermen or anything like that, you just do it the proper way and you do it through the parliament. I don't know why this government is so afraid of coming to the parliament, but they need to come to the parliament with these things and stop trying to go around the parliament and do as they please in this dictatorial fashion that they seem to like so much.
Well, Senator, that's more or less all the time that we have, but I'd like to thank you for coming on and giving us your perspective on this topic. This seemingly big issue that is kind of stalling out, and hopefully it's not just going to be one of those things that fall by the wayside. Yes. Negatively.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear a lot about it on the campaign trail, and it's for the population to judge going forward and looking back about how well these things will be implemented and what will happen. So we'll listen as we go on.
Thank you, Senator. Folks, we have to break for news on the hour here in WSN. When we return, we open the phone lines as usual. Hear from you, the viewer. We'll be right back.
Here's the WESN News on the Hour. I'm Sarah Ali. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. TNT on high wind alert orange level. Barrackpore resident begin flood cleanup nightmare. Man robbed by gunmen outside a bank in Trin City. Regionally, St. Kitts and Nevis kicks off its ban on the use of plastics. And internationally, North Koreans open up about food shortage and starvation. Now for the details. A high wind alert orange level has been issued for Trinidad and Tobago and offshore marine areas. According to the Met Office, the alert will remain in effect until Friday, June 16th. An official report states that there is a high 70% potential for gusts in the excess of 55 kilometers, especially in the vicinity of showers. Gusts may be brief but are capable of displacing unsecured roofs and loose outdoor objects. Marine craft can be adversely impacted by these strong winds, and visibility may be extremely low during dusk and dawn. Wind waves occasionally near 2.5 meters are also expected. Residents of Barrack are finding the task of cleaning up after recent heavy flooding due to inclement weather to be an arduous one. Help has been slow in coming due to the slow runoff of floodwaters in the area. After weekend floods, CPEP crews and community groups lend a helping hand, assisting in the daunting task of mopping up slush-filled houses. The previous night, the floodwaters had been pumped out. However, as the dawn broke, residents had to deal with more cleanup work, as well as the stench of dead animals and flood debris. Investigations are continuing into another alleged robbery where the victim recently left a bank. According to a police report, the incident took place around 3 p.m. on Tuesday. The 35-year-old victim of Bonnet Gardens went into a bank located off Trinity Central Road where he withdrew $9,000. He then left the bank and proceeded to the Trinity Mall car park on the southern side to deposit the money at another bank. On parking his vehicle, he was approached by two men, one armed with a firearm, who instructed him to hand over the quantity of cash. The victim became fearful for his life and was relieved of the $9,000 cash, his wallet which contained $1,000 cash, and one Samsung S10 cell phone valued at $5,000. The suspects then escaped in a waiting vehicle. Regionally, the Ministry of Environment and Climate Action in St. Kitts and Nevis continues to increase public knowledge on the dangers of plastic pollution through its ongoing education campaign drive to ban single-use plastics. Minister of Environment and Climate Action, Dr. Joel Clark, updated the country during the June 12th sitting of Parliament on some of the initiatives undertaken by the ministry to bring St. Kitts and Nevis closer to banning single-use plastics. Dr. Clark said that Cabinet has approved the commencement of the ban on single-use plastics. However, with continued stakeholder consultations, the Ministry of Environment will confirm when the ban on single-use plastics will begin, taking into consideration the input from stakeholders and the general public. Internationally, people in North Korea have said that food is so scarce their neighborhoods have starved to death. Exclusive interviews gathered by the BBC inside the world's most isolated state suggest the situation is the worst it has been since the 1990s. The government sealed its borders in 2020, cutting off vital supplies. It has also tightened control over people's lives. Pyongyang told the BBC it has always prioritized its citizens' interests. A construction worker who lives near the Chinese border told the BBC food supplies were so low that 5 people in his village have already died from starvation. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Sarah Ali. Thanks for watching.
preserving Belmont heritage and building community. And St. Francis of Assisi Church, Belmont present an Enchanted Evening 3 on Sunday, June 18th, 2023 at the Academy of the Performing Arts, Napa, Lord Kitchener Auditorium from 7 p.m. featuring incredible performances by QED, Raymond Edwards, Eddie Cumberbatch, and Nigel Floyd, the National Steel Symphony Orchestra, Chrison Joseph, Hermina Charles, Nigel Rojas, Rayon Elbon, the Shiv Shakti Dance Group, and other distinguished artists. Tickets available for $250, $300, or $400 at Napa Box Office, or call the ticket hotlines at 797-9884 or 799-3306. Support the St. Francis Restoration and Enchanted Evening 3.
We invite you to our 7th National Day of Prayer as we stand praying for the protective services of our nation, Trinidad and Tobago. Join us on Monday, June 19 from 2 p.m. at Woodford Square in the city of Port of Spain as we stand and pray for our Commissioner of Police and police officers, for the Acting Commissioner of Prison and Prison Officers, for the Chief Fire Officers and Firemen, for the Air Marshal, Defense Force, Coast Guard, and Air Guard, declaring, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." Psalm 33:12. It's our 7th National Day of Prayer, Monday, June 19, 2 p.m., Woodford Square, Port of Spain. See you there.
Kenny Sports Center is having a Grandfather's Day sale. From now until Sunday 18th June, get an amazing 20% off everything. You heard right, 20% off everything in store. Get all your top brands like Adidas, New Balance, Kinetic, and a lot more. Visit any of our branches today: Port of Spain, West Mall, Long Circular Mall, Trinity Mall, and Carlton Center San Fernando for this amazing 20% off sale. Happy Father's Day from Kenny Sports Center, where dads are appreciated.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the time we open up the phone lines so that we could hear from you, our viewers. So you could tell me where you disagree with me, where I was wrong, maybe where I was right, maybe where I sound foolish, maybe you might just have a different take, a different perspective, and we could mull over it and discuss it and see where that takes us. Because I think all too often we get caught up with the yes or no, the binary. It's either true or not true. It either must be right or it must be wrong. Sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of gray area to life, of which we see in our everyday lives if we just, pay attention and think, well, we need to keep that in mind when we look now at bigger pictures and bigger situations, because at the end of the day, it's all done by humans, just like you, just like me. So folks, the phone number is up on the screen, 628-4578. We have our first caller on the line from Couva. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Small.
Yes.
I haven't seen Keaton these days, but somehow you said that there's equality here. Now, I'm a pianist, but I listen to people from both sides speaking about what we're going through. And somehow there's a feeling that you're more on the red than any other thing in this world. Maybe wrong, maybe it's a matter of perception, but that is my belief. Now, I listen to you very carefully. I try to understand your logic. I watch you now. I know you look like, I know that you have something in Tobago, but I find you acting like if you don't want to take the either, and you want back paying them back in Tobago. So it's a matter of if I believe so, or I may be wrong. Thank you very much, Mr. Small.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. Ironically, usually people will, when this topic comes up, we will get more strong language used, whether it's directed at me or my co-host. And I understand. And I'm not necessarily going to be frustrated or tired having to address this, because technically we have addressed it before. But I get it. You can't literally perfectly watch and recall every single minute and second of every episode of Talking Point. One episode on one issue is not really going to be a good indicator of where somebody's political allegiance or bias lies. That's what I have learned, having to sit in the seat and kind of face now, putting my opinions out there and seeing how people interpret them and make assumptions about where my biases lie. I have tried to say that, look, I want Farley Augustine and his group to succeed, because the implications, if they fail, would be kind of like what happened when the COP failed and we kind of go back to the default of PNM and UNC, which I don't think is healthy right now. And I have nothing against the THA executive. It's just that there is disappointment there. And in fact, I have heard other people who I believe are anti-PNM, or at least they don't like the PNM recently. They have used, or I have heard that they have used way stronger language than me. So it is what it is. I'll go further with the explanation, but we do have a caller from Shagona, so I don't want to keep them waiting. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen. We keep talking about local government and property tax. I have explained this on a number of occasions, and everybody seems to forget it. Our local government in Trinidad here is one of the best. It is where the central government, who is elected to rule the country, decide to give power to certain areas to carry out some of their functions, and to give them a mechanism for raising the revenue to do that. And that mechanism was property tax, to do certain activities, which was mainly infrastructural work. Now they could also do other things that they could have charges for, like cemeteries and whatnot. They could also do things for central government, in which they will be paid a commission or a fee. And according to the status you were given, the highest status was city, then you had boroughs, right? And the law gives you up to a maximum of 10% of the rental value that you could charge. And the cities used to charge 10%. The boroughs used to charge 8%. And outside of that, when central government started to do that infrastructure work, they charge 7.5%. We have destroyed this whole thing, and there is no documentation. Dr. Rowley a few days ago said everything on local government reform is documented. But he have not documented where, when they had the local government reform, what was agreed was to give government central government property tax to the regional authority. And then they did the opposite and take it away. Explain this on a number of occasions, but I don't know. They would like to see me spit on the wind. Any questions?
Professor, you're not spitting in the wind. You're reminding us of the relevant points that we sometimes do not bring up and fail to bring up in the discussions.
The crux of the matter.
Well,
talk about all kind of things have minimum effect.
There's where we might have a difference of opinion, but that doesn't necessarily mean we disagree.
I don't see no difference of opinion. You always say you agree with everything I
That doesn't mean that we disagree on the validity of what you said.
So I feel you have no sensible question.
I agree with you. I think the whole situation.
Yesterday when I talk about the need for government And you said you missed it. I told you that 3 times before.
The need for
But not only
government.
that, I gave you the source, the Holy Bible, the Talmud, and the Quran. All of them have that. Right? And then you will remember. You know what I just do? When you have your repeat program, I just go through it and listen to all the points and check them out. You all must try that. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Professor. Okay. I commend your work ethic. And to be fair, I commend the level of detail that you're going into and the diligence to have these conversations, because to some extent that is what we need. I know that not everybody's going to have the time to do so, but as much as possible we need more people to put more effort, thought, time into coming up to their own conclusions, and not just, I mean, I get it. You will listen to somebody talk on TV or radio and you'll just adopt whatever it is they say. And it might even be in the case of whatever I say. And to some extent, that's not how it should be done. Yeah, you could do it here and there if you have to. But ideally, that would be the starting point for you to then now, okay, let's dig into this myself a little bit, you know, and see where the TV personality might be inconsistent or wrong or right, you know, because people on media are not perfect. So dig for yourself, come to your own conclusions. That's one of the reasons why, with regards to certain political topics and even sports topics, you know, at the end of the day, I would use what other analysts say as a starting point, but I'm not taking what they say as holy gospel, you know, whether I agree with them usually or not. Now, as we wait for more callers, 628-4578, call in, let me know what you think. With regards to my political affiliations, the truth is, regardless, once I got on this show, I don't really support either party. I support somebody who will do the job well. So they have people in both the PNM and UNC who I would like to support because I think they're doing a decent job. This is where I disagree with my co-host. I actually appreciate the job Terence Singh has done during the COVID pandemic. I understand the communication challenges that existed because we saw communications issues and allegations of not only truth and this, that, and the other around the world, right? It's an interesting, that alone could be a case study in media and mass communication, in my opinion. Now, with regards to this week, and I think this is what we need to remember, I could only speak on what actually happens. Right now, the THA executive are stumbling somewhat badly, and the central government is doing a very good job of not being in the news for the most part this week. And at the end of the day, you have to don't just take this week alone. I have gone to town on the former Attorney General, and there's about 5 to 6 different matters where I have criticized his proficiency, his qualifications as an attorney with regards to then his capacity to do the job as Attorney General based on the results from his time in office, as well as based on what he himself has said and where he has been found to be saying things that contradict himself. And I can't disagree with regards to certain criticisms that I might not necessarily want to use the strength of language that other people want to use, because at least in a general sense, you don't want to make it seem as though, even if that's not your intention, that it's going to be personal attacks. With regards to what's going on in THA, though, it's very hard to not say that people that have a similar perspective as me are not disappointed heavily, because the expectations for the current executive were very high. They were high in part because that is how they presented themselves. And nothing has gone so bad that it is irreversible. But to some extent, we might literally have seen the head of an executive You're talking about one of the most senior elected officials in TNT potentially reveal himself in some sort of corruption. That is potentially the stake of what we're witnessing here, right? Then there's further claims from the Prime Minister with regards to the Chief Administrator scenario, which might also be a damning situation. Let me remind you that Boris Johnson had to give up the Prime Minister, being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because he had a party during COVID. That's all it took in the UK. We have a call on the line from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Mrs. Small.
Yes.
I hope all is well with Keaton.
Yeah, all is well, all is well. Don't worry, he will be back. Right. He will be back and soon.
Okay, that's great news. Well, that's concerning what you are speaking about. I mean, it's all opinions that we have. You have your opinion, I might have an opinion, and we just might agree, might disagree. But the fact remains that we are not all perfect people in the soul. So we have different sorts of opinions. And we learn as we go along. And that is what life is about. We learn and listen. People who is probably better educated than we are may make mistakes as well, because it's all, everybody's in parallel to all these sorts of things. But your opinion, anybody's opinion is welcome. And you don't have to agree with it, but you take it graciously. And that is what this program is about and what you all are about. And I thank you all so much for that. And that's why I believe in you, both of you all. You are two young gentlemen that could carry any program forward to its highest standard we could reach. So you take care of yourself. Have a good morning, and I hope, Keaton, my boy, everything is all well with you. So take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for that. And yes, if I was unclear before, and let me reiterate once again, I am very appreciative of the first caller. The way how he presented his point of view, you know, it was very constructive, and I'm actually happy to have the chance to have this discussion. This might be one of those things that we might need to talk about over and over and over and over, because it's not the norm. People want to view politics as one side is right and one side is wrong. And I will say, well, no. For the most part, there's right and wrong. There's a lot of wrong to go wrong. And there's some rights. And it's about the merits of the circumstances of each situation as opposed to party affiliation of the individual. We have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning.
Hey, morning, sir.
Morning, morning.
You know, on the program with Karen, and Karen talked about coalition, and she sees in the future that coalition, that might be the only way somebody, some people will get elected into power. That sends me to this chap, Philip Alexander's party, and this coalition that he's formed with this sort of small party. What Philip Alexander needs to understand, and Gary Griffith as well need to understand, because he's another political party. They need to understand that we, the citizens that are looking on now want respect. I have listened to Philip Alexander, and Philip Alexander has been so disrespectful in his speech when he speaks, derogatory to members of the ruling administration. Whether or not we like the people in power does not say that we don't respect them or we don't have respect for them. And he needs to understand that if you want me to vote for, the first thing you have to show me that you're respectful. That's the first thing you have to show me. Aside from that, the other thing quickly, this same issue with it that you're speaking about with the THA again. When you look at I look at people like Max James, who has tried to defend the indefensible. When I look at, as I said to you before, remember I said to you on previous occasions that it seems as if there is a how do I put it, a shadow government in Tobago the people that really behind those people that were elected, and that is exactly what's happening, you know. If you listen to Watson Duke when he spoke the other day, there are people behind, and when you look at these programs in Tobago, and you listen to these programs in Tobago, and you see the defense that they're trying to defend these people, that this issue with this tape, and defend what's happening. That is, and I'm going to make a link here, Sean. You may not like the link, and you might think I'm stretching, but that same attitude, Sean, is what is affecting tourism in Tobago. The people in Tobago need to understand that it is about an attitude. Tourism is not about just, it's not just about facilities. You put up big hotels and you have good swimming pools, and it is about an attitude that permeates into the service, and that is the problem. If they don't fix that, then they're going to hell in a handbasket. Thank you, Sean.
Caller, I think I know where you're going, and at the very least, the reference, I understand it. I understand it as somebody whose family members have been in Tobago for quite some time, and we've seen, at least with regards to tourism, we've seen from the 70s and 80s and 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now we're in 2020. And how things have progressed. Progress is technically not the correct way. It's ironic use of the word, because it's been progressing downhill. And I think, yes, there is a lot of social and cultural issues that's under the surface with regards to things like that. That's not easy to treat with, because it's not as though Tobagonians are some horrible people and blah, blah, blah. No, that's not the case. It's more complex than that. But the results are, at least with regards to tourism, I feel as though not a lot of people in Tobago really want to be working in tourism, right? Which is why the THA employs, it is reported, 60%, although some people, myself included, believe it is as high as 80% of the island. And that's, regardless, that's not healthy. A government meant to service the needs of our population can't be employing the majority of the population. If the population was 5 people, well then okay, that's fine. But we're talking about a population of 60,000 plus. That doesn't make sense. It's interesting because you see the same issues with central government. You see a lot of the same issues, including the fact that, look, does the government really run the show? Are they beholden to party finances? Because Karen more or less alluded to that yesterday. And going back now with regards to parties, that's why, again, that's also one of the things why the situation in THA is so disappointing, right? It's not as though Kelvin Morris has proven himself to be this great statesman. He's looking better now, but he's looking better now in part because the THA is looking worse. And therein probably is where things get muddied with regards to Keaton and myself on this show. We're looking at actual viable alternatives to the government, and we're not really always seeing it. We're not. So just because we don't like how the PNM is running things, whether it's individual issues or overall, doesn't mean that we're automatically going to say vote in the UNC. And it's not that I'm saying that the institutions are bad and we need to just outright replace them. What we need is improvement. And there are many parts to that. And that's what all of the discussions that we have on Talking Point are about, that we're trying to get to. And it could be improving the individual parties. It could be new parties, right? One of the things, and I'm going back to this because coalition governments might be the future. The thing is, like in France and Germany, I believe, the coalitions are formed because the various parties have certain ideologies. Those ideologies then determine their stance on various issues. And the parties that could get along, that could compromise successfully, form successful coalitions. And those that can't have to stay apart. Coalitions in TNT are meaningless because it is not based off of any shared values. Because no party has an ideology in this country. The ideology of every single party is we want to do what is best for the country. That's not how it works. There are conservative approaches, there are liberal approaches. maintenance of the status quo over trying something new. Both have their pros and cons, and that's just the most basic way to differentiate it. Both have their pros and cons. We don't really stand for any sort of ideology, any sort of philosophy with regards to our politics, with regards to how we formulate policy. We don't stand for anything. Why are we surprised then when the political parties so easily crumble? Because they stand for nothing. If everybody is apparently doing this for the good of the nation, why is it then so contested? Why is the conflict so dire? Why is the political bacchanal so ridiculous and over the top? Why is there so much disagreement? There are apparently no differences in our thought processes. Or is it that because we stand for nothing except I just want to win and get into power? That is the cynical view of politics in the nation. It's hard to say that it's wrong. I'm over time, so I'm going to have to end that there. But I'll just, again, reiterate the point. There's no political ideology amongst any entity in this nation. They stand for nothing. So why do we expect them now to be able to stand up during tough times? Folks, that's it for Talking About. I want to thank all of our callers. I want to thank Senator the Honorable Janty Lashmidial. We will see you tomorrow morning. Make it a good day. Do your best, one step at a time. That's all we could ask of each other. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN